I'm Anu Acharya. I'm the CEO of MapMyGenome. A little bit of a background is that I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 1995. Did a couple of masters in the US and worked for a couple of companies. And started the first of my entrepreneurial ventures in the year 2000 with a company called Ossimum Biosolutions. And I think MapMyGenome was started about less than 2 years ago with the motivation of being able to say how do you bring technology to the consumer. So one of the things that we've seen with a lot of families today is that we've seen a lot of prevalence of diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancers, Alzheimer's and various other things. One of the things that people have realized is that if I can make an alteration in my lifestyle today, will that impact my healthy living? So you might be able to still have a life that is there, but you want to make sure that your life is filled with much more healthy years. And I think that's the prime motivation for a lot of people who take the test. The other obviously is that people also want to understand more about themselves. I think it's about being able to say how do you understand a little bit about not just as your personality, but you understand not just cognitively, but you also understand what genetics can, what genetic composition you're made of. And the third thing I think is people like to know, can I understand my ancestry? Can I understand some of the traits? Is that the sort of, those are the sort of things that are driving this industry. When we started in 2000, we started with bioinformatics products. And it was very interesting because at that time, I think that was the need of the hour. But and that was also when the big pharma and biotechs who were our customers, they used to really believe in having their own research divisions. They were creating new drugs and they were doing all these things. So at that time, tools was a great idea. But over a period of time, one of the things that we saw was that you really needed to understand that your customer had really changed in terms of how they were structured. So we started to see that the big pharmaceuticals were now looking at the smaller companies for research. They're no longer having that large divisions internally. And I think we at that point started to understand, and not just us, but the rest of the industry started to look at creating more solutions rather than being able to say, can I provide you a product? Because you no longer had the manpower to be able to actually work on those products. So I think that moved from being products towards saying, how do I provide you services or solutions that you might need, towards what we said was a research as a service. But over a period of time, as the amount of data collected became high, I think one of the biggest value was saying, how do you actually make real, true scalability out of this whole thing, right? So you could do a lot of research, but that's a limited field. And I think that was what has driven not just us, and you look at around India, across India, as well as across the world, you'll see that there are 2-3 things that have started to happen. One is the big data on the cloud, right? So you start to see a lot of the big sequencing data being processed through different cloud analytics, and that's primary thing that Ossimum is doing today. The other thing was saying, how do you actually bring this to the consumer? And when you're bringing it to the consumer, you are actually moving from the more the life sciences research world towards the healthcare world. And I think a lot of that is happening today because you've started to see real clinical applications to that. And I think that is what we've started to see as a change. So you no longer see too many companies making actual real software product, standalone products, but you start to see many more people who will build something as a workflow, being able to incorporate a lot of other things. So, and those are the sort of changes that we've seen. So research as a service was, we coined that about 7-8 years ago. And I think the reason for doing that was saying, how do we actually bring in something that is not purely just one specific product or solution, because everybody today, when you're looking at the whole environment, that whole environment has changed, and everybody is looking at being able to get the right kind of value for themselves. And so, which means that if you wanted to, let's say, get a question answered, you would be able to get that done from sourcing your samples that you need, towards being able to save it in a data management, towards being able to process them and create a service out of it, and being able to take that data and analyze it. So it was about doing the entire research function, but doing it outside of where it was originally placed at. So you now started to do not just provide an individual service or an individual product, but you've started to put all those pieces together. So in many ways, it's mimicking a research lab of an existing company, but now you're open to many more external collaborations. So I think that was the idea behind saying, we have software and we have services and we have data management and we have biobanks. How do you put all of that together towards being able to make this as something that can be used by a larger number of people, rather than it being an individual department for a large pharmaceutical company.